All right, what is the end game for AI? For decades, pretty much everyone would have said artificial general intelligence. But what if that whole idea is just wrong? A total dead end? That's what we're digging into today. We've got a major debate brewing between two giants in the AI world, and it really gets to the core of everything. What are we even trying to build here, and where do we go from here?
Okay, so this whole firestorm kicks off with this quote from LeCun. And I mean, you can't get much more blunt than this. He's one of the godfathers of deep learning, and he's basically saying AGI, the goal we've all been chasing, it doesn't even exist. Now that's a huge deal. It's like throwing a grenade into decades of research, challenging the North Star that has guided so many people in this field.
So, if AGI is out, then what's in, right? What are we supposed to be aiming for? Well, LeCun's team didn't just tear down the old goal. They've put up a new one. They're calling it Superhuman Adaptable Intelligence, or SAI. And this idea, it has kicked off a massive debate because another AI legend, Goertzel, has stepped up with a powerful counter. He's basically saying, hold on, this isn't a new direction. You've just misunderstood the map.
Okay, so first, let's really unpack this new proposal that's causing all this commotion. What exactly is this Superhuman Adaptable Intelligence?
So the big idea here is to stop chasing this kind of vague philosophical concept of general intelligence. Instead, LeCun's team wants a real, concrete engineering target, something you can actually measure. For SAI, it all boils down to this. How efficiently, and maybe more importantly, how fast, can an AI pick up new skills? It's a shift, right? Moving away from a big idea and toward a specific, measurable benchmark.
Okay, so let's flip the coin and look at the counter-argument from Goertzel. Now, this is a guy who basically helped put the term AGI on the map. So, as you can imagine, he has some thoughts. And to put it lightly, he's not buying it.
So here's Goertzel's aim point, right at its core. He's saying SAI isn't some brand new revolutionary idea that's going to replace AGI. Not at all. He argues it's just one specific and maybe even incomplete version of AGI. It's just a single dot inside a much bigger picture, a framework for AGI that's been around for a while, a framework that, he points out, the SAI paper doesn't even mention.
Now to back this up, Goertzel brings out the receipts. He points to what he calls a pattern in LeCun's work. You can see it here. He argues that LeCun has this habit of dismissing an idea and then, a few years later, proposing something that looks suspiciously similar, just with a new name. He's framing this whole SAI thing as just the latest chapter in that story. So in his view, it's not a new idea, it's a rebrand.
So to really get what Goertzel is saying, he uses this fantastic analogy that just makes everything click. It's all about the difference between a map and a single point on that map.
Okay, let's start with a concept we all kind of get, the theory of computation. Think about it. It's not a thing you can hold, right? It's this abstract, mathematically perfect idea of what can be computed. It's the universal concept, the clean, perfect map of the entire territory.
And this is where the analogy really pays off. See, you have the abstract theory, like the theory of computation. And then you have a specific thing, a physical thing, like an Intel chip. The chip does computation, but it isn't the theory of computation. Goertzel argues it's the exact same thing with AGI and SAI. AGI is the big overarching theory, the map. And SAI? It's just one specific implementation, one testable benchmark. It's like an Intel chip. You wouldn't say the whole idea of computation is broken just because one chip has limits, would you? Of course not. And that's his point. AGI is the map. SAI is just one destination you can find on it.
So what this really boils down to is that LeCun's paper, in Goertzel's view, is making a fundamental mistake. It's confusing the fact that AGI is hard to test with the claim that the concept of AGI is incoherent. Look, anytime you build something in the real world, whether it's a computer chip or an AI benchmark, you have to make compromises. You have to make specific choices. But those practical choices don't mean the big underlying theory is wrong.
So, okay, if AGI is this big map, what does it actually look like? Let's zoom in and take a look at this framework that Goertzel says already exists, giving us a solid, rigorous way to think about AGI.
He calls it the EPGI framework, and honestly, the best way to think about it is like a big control panel with a bunch of knobs you can turn. Each knob represents a different variable.
You've got one for which environments matter, one for which tasks or goals count, one for the time scale you care about, one for resources like compute and data, and even one for constraints like safety. By turning these knobs to different settings, you can define and test for any specific kind of intelligence you want. So when you look at it this way, through the lens of this framework, SAI suddenly doesn't look like a whole new concept. It just looks like one very specific setting on the control panel. The gamma knob is set to human tasks, the horizon knob is cranked way up to focus on adaptation speed, and the resources knob is set to heavily penalize wasting time or compute. It's a single, crisp setting of the knobs. It's one recipe, not a totally new way of cooking.
And this is why having the map is so incredibly useful. It doesn't just show us where SI is located, it shows us all the other places we could go. It reveals all the other possible settings for these knobs. For example, you can create something like a safe EPGI, which focuses on power but, and this is key, under safety constraints. The map forces us to ask, what knobs did the SI proposal forget to include? Where's the knob for safety? That's the kind of question that becomes obvious once you have the full map.
And this brings us to the really constructive part of Goertzel's argument. He's not just criticizing, he's proposing a way forward. He says, look, let's stop arguing about definitions. Let's use this map to take the good ideas in SAI and build something even better.
So knob number 1 to add, safety constraints. This is a huge one that he argues AI completely misses. A safe SI wouldn't just ask, can you get powerful fast? It would ask, can you get powerful while staying inside these ethical boundaries? It's about testing for power and restraint at the same time. And that's the difference between a cool science project and a system you can actually trust in the real world.
Okay, the second knob he wants to add is, well, it's even more mind-bending. Open-ended evolution. Instead of just seeing if the AI can solve the problems we give it, an OESI would measure if the system can invent its own new goals, its own new capabilities, things we never even thought to ask for. We're talking about rewarding actual cognitive growth, not just checking boxes on a to-do list.
So here's how you build what he calls SAI+. You start with the core idea from SAI, fast adaptation. That's a great metric. Then you bolt on the second piece, safety. You add those critical constraints. And finally, you add the third layer, open-endedness, the ability for the system to grow on its own. You put those three together and you get something much, much more powerful, a benchmark that actually starts asking the questions we really care about for the future of AI.
So at the end of the day, maybe this isn't really SAI versus AGI. Maybe the most productive way to look at this whole thing is to see SAI as a really sensible, super useful, testable slice of that broader AGI framework. It's like LeCun's team picked a great destination to aim for, and Goertzel's work provides the map that shows us not only how to get there, but all the other amazing places we could visit along the way.
And that really leaves us with the final and maybe most important question of all. When we're sitting here designing the future of AI, which of these knobs are we going to decide matter the most for humanity? Are we just going to crank up the dial on speed and efficiency? Or are we going to be thoughtful about dialing in safety? And maybe even leaving a little room for the kind of open-ended creativity that we can't even imagine yet. Because the settings we choose on that control panel today, well, they're going to define what intelligence even means tomorrow.